I start my talk talking about using these three words: innovation, friendship, and a shared future, because these powerful words actually capture, for me, what has made my professional life as a scientist a fulfilling and a meaningful journey. So in a way, it isn't surprising that WISP was actually the brainchild of two wonderful women that you've been hearing about, Karen Wetterhahn and Kara Muller, who were themselves 100% in and for science when they created the program. Science is, by definition, to me anyway, highly innovative. It is about innovation. The WISP program is about innovation. It's about pushing boundaries. It's about asking questions that have never been asked before, or asking old questions in completely new ways. It's about exploring ideas. It's about developing ideas that no one's even thought of yet. And sometimes it's about doing things that are somewhat dangerous technologies. Although my kids never thought I had a very dangerous life, they didn't really know. But it's also about change, and it's about changing a lot. So I think it's also not surprising that some of these things do so well in an academic environment, which really does relish innovation and really tries to support change, and is often led by people who are themselves innovators. For my own life as a scientist in and for science, it's actually been almost entirely as well about friendship. I am a scientist, but my work and who I am as a person are completely bound together. I don't leave being a mother, being a sister, being a daughter, being a partner, being a teacher at the door when I start thinking about science, just like none of you leave those parts of you behind. But for many years, women, and in fact, in lots of areas, were told that they couldn't be both, or if they were both, they had to keep those parts of themselves very separate. And I think one of the really important parts about WISP was that it didn't think about keeping you separate. My own work as a scientist has always flourished by the friendships that have been made as we were at the lab together, or working as a dean or a provost with the people that work on those jobs with me. It's through that process of unfolding a shared discovery, dealing with a thorny problem, and learning and mentoring that we do always as a team sport. It's by doing those things together that my own life has been rich, and my scientific life has been rich. And in fact, when we look back over time at what we've accomplished, I think almost all of us are going to say that those relationships are the things that have meant so much to us, more than anything else in our careers. So that's part of WISP at 20. So for women, being in, let alone being for science, that combination of the who we are and how we try to do it is all part of the same thing. In 1979, just a few years after they actually began admitting women to Dartmouth, the college received funding from the Carnegie Foundation for a 4-year study to see how it could actually improve in the preparation and retention of women in the sciences. So that was actually quite far in advance. But in 1983, when I came, and maybe just a year or two after that, Laura, I think we were invited to a lunch by Karen Wetterhahn for the women in science at Dartmouth, and we could fit around one table, and that included all the women from the medical school as well. It was a time when there was a lot of change. At the time of that study, women represented 52% of the US population, yet only 10% of the scientists. At the same time that we were seeing the start of the Genome Project, the launching of the Hubble telescope, the country was failing to take advantage of the brain power of a huge part of a potential workforce, half the people in the country that could be deployed into these areas, which were really the women. And to this day, still continues not to deploy the women and people of color nearly as well as we'd like to. Articles were starting to appear everywhere about the need for this, so it was something that was really growing and being appreciated. But women were underrepresented in virtually every area. They lagged behind men in industry and in the academy. In their numbers, their salaries were completely different. The total women who graduated from Dartmouth in 1990 with a major in the sciences was supposed to be about 52. So it's still very, very small. So I came to Dartmouth in 1983. As I said, I was only a handful of women at the time. And I think I'm very lucky. I actually, like many women of my generation who are scientists, both my parents were scientists. My dad was a chemist, my mom was a chemist. So I didn't grow up in your normal household. I grew up getting weather sets and chemistry sets along with dolls and other things. And probably much more importantly than that, I just grew up with two parents that absolutely never said you can't do something. In later years, I realized how much an advantage that was to my friends that I grew up with that were hearing very different messages at home. I had also come through a training world that was male. I was the only female PhD in a laboratory with 15 male PhD students. We did a lot of things in mixed groups, but I only had 2 faculty members in all my science training who were women from the time I was an undergraduate till I graduated. And so I was used to that environment. And I'm glad to say that right now I'm not used to that environment anymore. That's not what it looks like. Now, luckily in my case, help came very fast, and it came in the person of an undergraduate named Becky Todd. She is a friend to this day, and she had taken my first class, which had almost no students in it. And she came to my door, knocked on the door, and said, "I want to do a thesis project with you." And the second Becky came in the lab, laughter came back in the lab, activity came, bustle came, teaching, sharing, debating, everything enlivened that time. And that lab was never going to be empty again, and has been filled with students and colleagues my whole career. And then for me, help did come in the person of Karen Wetterhahn, who was there to answer any question that I asked and to provide really, for me, my first model of what a woman scientist should be, could be, someone that I could really look to for inspiration. And she inspired not only me, but she inspired countless other women and men at Dartmouth with her model. So that creation of WISP in 1990 was founded on that very crucial premise that is related in every single way to my own personal story. And that was that Dartmouth could do the most that it could possibly try to do to foster the development of young women scientists' success by providing a supporting community of peers, getting people together, building that community of peers, mentors and role models, and providing very strong opportunities for them to get internships and to be successful in their hands-on work. So we'd invite women scientists to campus, organize faculty panels, have seminars, and very early on involve as many of the men as possible. And I will say that Dartmouth men in science all stepped up. As you've heard today, some of the longest mentors have been the men who mentored those early women scientists. And so they're looking to create within a larger culture a context that presupposed women could be absolutely successful in this area and enable them to do that and provide examples of what a life of science could actually mean, how it could be a successful life. And I remember sitting with Josh Hamilton, Karen Wetterhahn, and Carol Muller down in Thayer as we were the committee that did the first hiring of Mary Pavoni. And we were thinking about who do we want to bring in to make this really wonderful program successful. Mary, Carol Muller, if you know her, just got fire in her eyes, and we have got to have someone with real passion that just loves this work. And Karen said, in her very empowering and very strong way, said, they have to be a person that is strong and kind. And I think those were wonderful models in the beginning for what we looked for to get this program going, and we always loved having Mary there. By 1995, under Mary's directorship, the number of WISP interns had grown to 98. The number of women majoring in the sciences had really grown. If you look across the board now, what we can see is that WISP has been very powerful in empowering our students. And I think the really important issue we also want to raise is taking what we've learned from WISP and applying it more broadly. I think that is one of our challenges going forward. And it's not just the undergraduates either. There are still barriers to women at higher levels. This just shows you changes in the percents of women in graduate programs. Our arts and science graduate programs are almost 50% women. So that is, in the last 10 years, that's a big movement forward. I don't have the 1990 data, but it was considerably lower. At Thayer, we still have a ways to go. They're up to about 28% of the Thayer students are women. Tuck, I put that up because business often follows science. They're very, very similar. And so their number's about 33%. Medical school, we all know this. Our medical school is really getting to be very high percents of women. But when you look at the faculty, it's still a lot lower. So in arts and sciences, women in the faculty are about 22 to 23% of the faculty. So they're still considerably lower than even our students. At DMS, they're about 24%. At Thayer, the number goes up and down because the numbers are small, so I think you're at about 15% again right now. You know, you lose one person when you don't have a big faculty, it goes up and down. And Tuck, about 24%. So we've got a lot of room for growth here still in seeing women move into these leadership positions. The picture of women in science in 2011, though, is still complicated. It's different than 1990, but we still have a ways to go. Women now, as you see, account for about half the MD degrees, more than 50% of the bachelor's and master's in the life sciences, and more than 3/4 in veterinary medicine. But we're also seeing other trends. After a very, very slow start of Nobel Prize winners, for example, of the first 100 individuals receiving the prize in physics, only 2 have been women. Of the 150 getting in chemistry, 4 are women. The early years of the Nobel Prize was very, very low in the number of women. But in recent years, for example, just 5 women have been received Nobel Prizes since 2004. So the pipeline's growing and women are moving in to more of those leadership positions. But in the most math-intensive areas, women continue to make up a disproportionately small minority. And that's true in biotech companies, it's also true in computer science companies, and it's often also true very much in top management jobs in almost all these areas. In the academic world, another trend has emerged, and that is while women have been increasingly choosing to major as undergraduates, they are not going on to get advanced degrees, or if they get PhDs, they are still not going on at the same number to look for jobs in those areas. The trends show up very starkly when you start looking at numbers of department chairs. A 2009 survey revealed just 2 female department heads among the country's top 50 chemistry programs, and no women department chairs upon the top 50 engineering and physics programs. Now, I'd like to say that is not true at Dartmouth. We have had women chairs in physics. Have we had it in math? Don't think in math. We've had them in biology. We've had a dean of the engineering school who's been a woman. We have had women in these positions, and chemistry, Karen, but they aren't there all the time. They're rare, but we have been much better about getting women into these positions. I have seen great changes at Dartmouth, though, and I think we all can talk about that here, but we can't stop, because for our students that come in every 4 years, they see only who they see at that time, and so it's really important that we continue to put pressure for change and look for things that we can do that make all of our students realize that these careers are possible for them and can be a rich part of their life. You know, vestiges of that 1990 environment are pretty stubborn, and they remain. But increasingly, when we look at things like the low numbers of women gaining tenure or becoming department chairs or managers in industry, the question has really changed to one of choice. The idea here now is it's not that women can't do it. In fact, they clearly can, but they're choosing not to do it. And that is opening up a new set of issues for us to really consider. What is it about the life? What is it about they see we're doing as the people who are living these lives, or the lives they want, that are making people choose not to enter into this type of career? And that's a new question and a very important one. Many people think that's largely described by factors surrounding family formation and child rearing and gendered expectations, but people are questioning that too. The number of women in advanced positions and men who have active family duties is also really changing. So we have a moment to shed our preconception about why these things exist and really ask ourselves, what is it that we need to do to actually improve the likelihood people will choose that? This is something Dartmouth can probably do. We can be a leader again. We have the size and scale, and we clearly have the interest, just demonstrated by this room, to start asking a whole new host of exciting and potentially transformative questions. And so I think that's where I always look at the glass half full, but I see a real opportunity here for us to really rethink things and really ask these questions in a new way in an effort to really improve that opportunities for our students, the success of all our wonderful faculty, and our impact as leaders in the world. And we can trust, I think, our intuition that a lot of this still will come from the transformative power of mentoring relationships. That is going to remain at the core, because those feelings of friendship, the way we relate to each other, how we work together to unfold the beauty of what we all think is in the world of science, is probably as important as almost anything else we can do. So we can do more, and we can continue to do what we do well. And I think that's something that will be fantastic for us in the next couple of years. So I'd like to just leave you with two stories that I think set the stage for what is a shared future, and a future of continuing aspiration and maybe success. The first is a story that was described by the anthropologist and natural science writer Lauren Isley, and I'm sure many of you have heard this. One day a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking up something and gently throwing it into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "What are you doing?" And the youth replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean." I'm sure all of our kids have done this. "The surf is up, the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die." "Son," the man said, "don't you realize that there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it back into the surf. Then, smiling at the man, he said, "I made a difference for that one." And the second is also another deeply personal story for me. Another woman scientist from Dartmouth also had a great impact on my life, and that was the wonderful and late Donella Meadows. Many of you must know her. She was a MacArthur Genius Award winner. She wrote Limits to Growth. She had a big presence here at Dartmouth and in the world, and she was a visionary scientist who led the way in aspects of systems engineering and was dedicated to conservation and sustainability. When asked how she could keep going, working so tirelessly on issues related to sustainability and conservation in a world that just seemed ready to turn backwards on these things, Dana said, "I never get discouraged because it's never too late. Time has not run out as long as we start today." So I want to say thank you to so many people that made this night so nice, and especially to Margaret. You've thanked so many people, but we want to thank you for giving us such a wonderful evening to celebrate all of the guests and the people that come from far away to join us, Amy, Karen, and other students, ex-students or graduated students that are here, and so many of you who have really made such fundamental and, in every case, deeply personal contributions to WISP. You've made that a reality for every single student that you've touched, and also for all the faculty here. So it's a pleasure to have a chance to talk to you. Thank you for coming, for all that you do to mentor students and each other. And of course, I'll end by saying it's never too late, and working together, I think we have a wonderful and bright future. So thank you very much.